All right. Welcome to the How Do I Get That Job podcast. This is Tyler Cutterback. This is episode 6. I am here with Liz Sheehan. And why don't you just introduce yourself? I'll let you do that.
And so, hey guys, my name is Liz. I am a genetic counselor at McGee Women's Hospital in Pittsburgh. I know Tyler and Stella, we used to be neighbors. And so that's how I kind of came to be associated with this podcast here and helping you guys out.
Thank you so much for being on.
Yeah.
So, can you just start off by explaining what a genetic counselor is and what you do on a very broad scale?
Right. Nobody knows what it is, so that's fine. So I, at its most basic level, say that we're the translators for what doctors say and what test reports say as to what it means for that individual and their families as far as their own health care, their risks going forward to have their own children or other members of their family. So that's basically genetic counseling as a whole, but there's lots of different facets within genetic counseling.
So what do you mean by tests?
So if someone gets genetic testing, or even before getting to the point of doing genetic testing, if they have lab results, or they've had a diagnosis of cancer, or they have a finding on ultrasound, things like that, explaining to patients what it can be associated with, what it means. Most importantly, if we don't have a diagnosis at that point, that it's not a diagnosis.
Okay.
And what other information we can find out by doing genetic testing, and what the benefits, limitations, risks are in doing that.
So you said that there's multiple different facets
Right.
of this. Can you kind of explain some of the subcategories?
So I'd say the big 3 are prenatal counseling, cancer counseling, and pediatric counseling. Now, in the era of genomic medicine, subspecializations, there's lots more specialties within that. So I'm a prenatal counselor at McGee Women's Hospital, but I also focus on reproductive genetics. Some of my other colleagues focus on adult genetics, focus on cardiomyopathy, Huntington's disease. It can get very disease specific.
Okay.
There are also laboratory genetic counselors who just focus on variant interpretation of test results for changes in our genetic information that we don't know the meaning of yet. There are research genetic counselors that talk with patients and families going through research studies as far as gene therapies, things like that go. So there's lots of different areas that you can get involved with it. So I was in college and I was pre-med, like any other science major, kind of going through college. But I really didn't love, the more I started shadowing doctors and seeing kind of what their day-to-day was, didn't love seeing that for my own career. I wanted more one-on-one patient interaction. So I was in a genetics class for completing my biology degree at the time, and they had mentioned all these other things that you can do within genetics, and genetic counseling was one of them. And so I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. I don't know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, that night, essentially just kind of delved into it and thought it was the coolest job ever, that you get to do a combo of teaching without having to grade things, but also there's a psychosocial counseling component to it, of sitting people and going through some of this really tough information when it has ramifications for them, their children, their family members. And so that's how I kind of came to genetic counseling with that.
Wow. So where did you get your undergrad degree?
So I went to Loyola University in Chicago,
Okay.
which is right on the north side, right on the lake there.
And you're originally from Chicago?
Yes.
Is that why you went to Loyola, because it was close?
Yeah, it was, ironically, my second choice. At the time, I'd wanted to go to Penn,
Okay.
out there in Philadelphia, and I'd gotten rejected there because it's Penn, and ended up going to Loyola because I loved the campus. It was beautiful. I loved Chicago. It was a great city, and they had a combination of both doing really well in science. They also had an Italian major, and I was studying Italian in high school. I would have liked to keep up with it in college, so I could dual degree essentially while I was there.
Did
to
you?
be able to do both. Yes, I have 2 bachelors.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you have a BS and a BA then?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. High five. So can you tell me a little bit about what it's like going to an urban campus?
It's very different. All my friends went to like University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and it's all very much like there's a central quad. It's very spread out, but all the buildings are mostly there. everything's very college focused. Being at Loyola, it was very much you are integrated into a community that's already been established outside of that university. And so at Loyola, it's on, so it is on the north side of Chicago. It's in a neighborhood called Rogers Park. And there's kind of everything within Rogers Park as far as there's a little strip of street down Devon Avenue. That's Little India, Little Pakistan. There's another strip down Clark Street. That's like Little Mexico, Little Latin America over there. And so you get a lot of diversity within that area, but then you get closer and closer to campus. And Loyola itself is a fairly affluent, upper middle class, white campus, essentially, right on the lake there. And so you get a very big mix depending on where in Rogers Park you are, but you're so close to so many different things where you can leave the college aspect of it if you wanted to. And it's very integrated into a city life.
Maybe you don't know this, maybe you do. Did they have guaranteed housing all 4 years, or did you have to live off campus at a certain point?
No, they required you to have housing for 2 years to be on campus, closer to campus, and then you could have housing on campus. There wasn't housing available for everyone, and that's because most people choose to live off campus in their last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, you see that in a lot of college campuses, but definitely just on the college side of things, that's something that parents like to know a lot about is, can they live there for all 4 years if they want to?
Yeah.
So really it's more about living off campus junior, senior year then?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly can if you wanted to. There were dorms specifically for junior, senior, kind of upper level undergraduates who wanted to stay on campus, whether they had their housing covered because they were part of maybe an ROTC program, or they were working on campus more heavily. If they were exchange students and wanted to live on campus for that purpose, there's lots of different options there. But they also touted a lot of being involved in your community, being involved in Chicago. We are here in this amazing city. Use your resources to be able to do that. And with your tuition, you got a monthly, or I guess annual pass for the CTA, which is the transit in the area.
Nice.
So it's the bus. They call it the L there. That's the subway, but it's above ground.
The elevated train.
Right.
Yep.
And so you got access to all of Chicago that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're originally from the Chicago area. You went to a school in Chicago. You have a master's degree, though, right?
Right.
Where'd you get that?
So I went to Brandeis University just outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
That's really funny. So you're episode 6. Episode 3, he got his bachelor's degree from Brandeis.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a very cool school.
Yeah, it's very... I've never actually visited Brandeis myself. I've always seen, like, Harvard and MIT and, like, the big names that you go to because they're fun as tourist attractions, more or less. But I've heard great things.
Yeah, I didn't hear much about it until I was looking at graduate programs. And the thing about genetic counseling there are not many graduate programs because it's such a specific field to go into. And in the grand scheme of science, genetics is fairly new. That we didn't sequence the whole genome project essentially until we didn't start it until the 90s. It wasn't completed until the early 2000s. And so the whole concept of having professionals just to interpret genetic information is a really new concept in healthcare. And hospitals now are just being able to then now realize the value of being able to do that and then hire people as a result. And so when I applied, there were only 34 programs in North America, so United States and Canada, that had genetic counseling specific master's programs. Wow. And so you kind of look to see, all right, where would I like to be? And what those programs entailed. Overall, the curriculum is pretty similar. You'll be prepared to be a genetic counselor no matter where you go, but they may have different focuses. That some are very involved in disability awareness, like Brandeis is. Some have more of the psychosocial training, like Brandeis does. Others are more affiliated with a medical school campus, so they can utilize the resources that a medical school would be able to give you. And so they're all very different in that respect.
Okay.
Facts and figures is detrimental to that therapeutic relationship.
So, prenatal genetic counseling, I'm sure, like, the big buzzword there is, like, designer babies.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, like, the reality of that and if that's even what is remotely close to what you do.
It's not remotely close to what I do. Most of the people I see are already pregnant. But so I think when people think of the concept of designer babies, it's editing the genome to make your child look a certain way, act a certain way, things like that. We are so far away because we don't even know what genes it is that specifically make one particular hair color, that dictate aspects of our personality, things like that. We are so far away from that because we have bigger fish to fry. We're trying to figure out genes that cause ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. We still don't know what some of the genetic causes for that are. And so then you first have to figure out what the cause is for that. What specific changes can make that happen? You then have to figure out in an embryo how to make those changes happen if they're not already there. There are, I guess, studies now, and there was kind of a big article about it coming out of China a couple of weeks ago about CRISPR-Cas system and editing, and essentially having been born the first genome edited baby for I think it was a CCR5 variant that would make them resistant to HIV.
Okay.
But we also don't know what the offset effects are. So what CRISPR-Cas is essentially a cut and paste tool for our genome. And we know it can be very specific to certain areas, and that's what certain bacteria use to edit within their own genomes. But it also, in humans, the studies and research just isn't there and not robust enough to know it's really specific to that one area you want to be able to do, let alone if you want to do many different areas, because that would just be a mess of cutting and pasting throughout the whole genome. And so we're not even at a point in embryos to be able to take away maybe a mutation associated with cystic fibrosis, for example. So I think we are pretty far away from that. I think it's important to have these conversations and know that ethically, probably not the greatest thing to do. But as of right now, my job stems so far away from that.
And just for the sake of clarification, CRISPR, it's clustered palindromic repeats.
I don't know what the actual acronym is. I used to when I was in grad school, and then I really didn't need to know that for my job, and everything that I didn't need to know kind of went out of my brain.
Okay. So. Yeah, just from my own memory, you're absolutely right. From what I remember, it's a cut and paste function for your own genome. It's an enzyme that they can put in to change around. All right. I was just hoping to get the actual name. I'll have to throw it in there later. So, all right. So you work a lot with families. You don't make designer babies. Nope. What kind of student were you in high school? Like, were you the kind of person that really loved science? Were you the more like talkative person? Like, what kind of person makes a good genetic counselor? If you enjoyed this video or found it informative, then please like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell notification to join the notification squad so you never miss any of our videos. We put out videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday covering a wide variety of topics revolving around the college admissions and job search processes. If you like this video more than a share and subscription can show, then check out our merch store. The link is in the description below. The proceeds from our merch store allows Let's Go to College to provide free and at-cost college and career help to low-income, first-generation, and at-risk students. We really appreciate your support, and so do the students.